Hey guys, this is Micah with Farm Dog Oklahoma, and I was just wanting to do an intro video on our e-collars, some of the main features, some of the extra features, and a brief overview of how we will use it in training. So first things first, this is the box it comes in, and so we're going to go over what all is in the box. So when we first open it up, you'll see all this information, and so we have a warranty card here. We have our charger. You can see both ends are the same. It does not matter which plugs into the remote or the collar. And then we have the charger box for it to plug into the wall. In this little section, we have what I call the little bags and knickknacks. So one of these bags, we have all these contact points. There'll be different contact points in here depending on what your dog needs. And that's something I will individually go over with everyone for their specific dogs. In this little bag of knickknacks, we have a couple different tools. So we have this little tab. This we can use to pop the casing on and off of the remote, so it fits into these notches on the sides, and this casing can come on and off. This is really handy if the remote gets really dirty, if it gets some treat dust in it, if it gets dropped in mud. Whatever the case might be, you're able to pop both the front and back off of that casing to rinse it off. This tool here, this little clear tool, is a tester for your e-collar. So there's a little light in the middle. You pop this on top of the contact points, and the higher you go on the e-collar, the brighter this light shines on the inside. This is really handy to be able to test to make sure your e-collar is working correctly. However, I hardly use it. And then this little round tool is what we use to change the contact points. And so it will fit over the contact points to be able to switch them on and off. This specific dog has needed wingtips, which are these special contact points. Every dog is different, and it's super customizable, so I'm able to fit the best contact points, so your dog has the best experience with the e-collar. But this tool just goes over the little bolts, and you're able to twist them on and off. I only hand tighten stuff because the contact points and nuts can get stuck inside of here, and it is very difficult to get them off. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to show you guys how to work is the remote. So this remote has many different features and options. It is highly customizable. However, I will show you guys the 3 main features you will need to know in order to use it for training, and everything else is kind of extras that I will go over at the end of the video. So first things first is this big button here on the back, and you can see there's the L slightly imprinted on it. So if we hold this down about 3 seconds or until that screen lights up blue, it is on. Same thing to turn it off. Hold it down about 3 seconds or until everything goes dark, and it is off. So I will shoot it back on so we're able to use it. You can see this little light here at the bottom is currently flashing green. That means the charge is anywhere between 100 to 50%. When it starts flashing kind of like an orange amber color, it is between 50 and 25%, and if it starts flashing red, it is under 25. Now the exception is when I have the collar on and I'm tapping one of the buttons, it will go red to show that it's communicating with the collar. So you can see it'll go red, but it's still blinking green, so my charge is still good. Here in our antenna, when this red line is on the front of the dial, this means we are at 0, and the numbers will go all the way up to 100 and all the way back down to 0. So every dog we get into training is different and varies on their needs of what levels they need, what contact points they need, even how the collar is fitted. Some dogs need it fitted a little tighter, and then some dogs need it fitted a little looser. So this number on the screen is not as important as being able to read your dog and understand how your dog needs the collar to be used. All of those are things I will go over with every individual in person to make sure the training really sticks and you're really able to use the e-collar to the best of its capabilities. Now, in order to use the e-collar, we are going to tap this black button. It has a little S on it to send the signal to the collar. So this is what sends this stem to the collar. You'll know if you're hitting the right black button because there's this little tactile knob here. And so as long as that's above, you're hitting the right button. Now, that is really all you need to know in order to use this e-collar proficiently in training. Is the dial is what controls your number, and you just use that black button to signal, and then this big button is your on and off. And the other thing you will need to know is the charger port here on the back. So we'll lift that up. So that's what you plug the charger into. And you just want to make sure that that's plugged back in snugly anytime you unplug it. It is waterproof and it will flow as long as it has this casing on, but the charging port does need to be plugged back in. I recommend charging both the remote and the collar every night, just like we do with our phones. So I typically do, like, the dog goes up in the crate, I pull the collar off and I plug the collar and remote in I keep the chargers next to their crates, and I plug them in. That way I know first thing in the morning when I let dogs go out and potty, I can pop the e-collars on and I know I'm going to have a fresh charge. Now, that being said, I do not leave the e-collar on the same spot on the dog for longer than 3 hours. So if you're going to be home all day and the dog's going to be wearing the e-collar a lot, about every 3 hours, I just swap what side of the neck the e-collar's on. This prevents any pressure sores or any irritation on their skin and neck from the e-collar to become an issue. Now, I do take the e-collars off whenever I am not with the dog. So if I'm going out to run errands and dogs are up in their crates, the e-collar comes off. This way, I know they're going to be safe. It's not going to get stuck on anything, and it's not going to be on long enough to irritate their skin. But I do recommend anytime you are home, anytime you are with the dogs, to just pop the e-collar on. It's not going to hurt them to wear it. You don't want them learning, well, when the e-collar's on, I have to listen. When it's off and mom or dad gives me a command, I don't have to listen. So that's really going to help you out in terms of training, is if you just leave the e-collar on whenever you're with the dog. Even if you don't think you have to use it, just having it on will really help in those moments when something unexpected happens and you do actually need to use it. All right, now that we've gone over kind of the basic things about the remote and some things about the e-collar and leaving it on, all of that, we will now move on to the actual e-collar itself. All right, so here is our e-collar. Almost every dog will come with a bungee and quick release collar. This way it is really easy to get on and off your dog. While I have your dog in training, I will fit it to your dog's neck. So unless your dog is a growing puppy or puts on a couple of pounds, you shouldn't need to change this from how I have it set. For some dogs, it's going to feel pretty snug when you first put it on, but that's because their neck tenses as the collar is going on, and so all those muscles are activated. And then you notice as your dog relaxes, it actually goes to the correct fitness. So that's part of why we have this bungee on here, so we can kind of stretch it, and this will stretch and release to how relaxed the dog is. All right, so to turn on your remote or your collar, you're gonna find this little red dot on the remote and this little red dot in the collar next to the light, and you're just gonna tap those together. If it blinks red, it's turned off. And if it blinks green, it's turned on. So it's this cool magnetic system that allows you to be able to turn it on and off. You just want to be careful if you have any magnets on your dog's collars, like some tracking systems, like Fire Tractive, sometimes contain magnets as part of their connections to get it connected onto the collar. And if those tap just right, it will actually pop your collar off. So you just want to be aware if you have anything magnetic on your dog's collar, to just make sure it's never going to be able to tap that red button, because it will always turn it off when you need it the most. So now that we have the collar on and off, the charging port is here on the inside of the collar, and so it's here along the bottom. So you pull that out and you're able to plug it in. And just like with the remote, you just want to make sure that is plugged back in and fits snug against the collar when you unplug it. This way the collar remains waterproof and it's fine for your dog to swim in. You can give a bath with it on. They can be out in the rain. And it is waterproof down to about 90 feet. You just want to make sure whenever you're done with the water activities, you pull this collar off and you dry the skin of the dog. Make sure it's really dry so there's no moisture between the collar of the dog, or just put them up until they've dried and put it back on. And as I said before, you can see this dog has wingtips. It's just a different point. The dog has a pretty thick coat around its neck, so this allows us to reach down through the coat and actually make connection with the muscle. So we're maintaining a good connection instead of the connection sometimes connecting, sometimes not, causing confusion for the dog. All right, so I'm gonna use my leg to demonstrate how I want this to fit. And so we're gonna put it on, and this way you can also tell it's not painful to put on onto rear. But I do want to snug 2 fingers. So I'm going to kind of fit it. And you can either place it on your dog's neck like you fit it into where it's snug but not comfortable. So I'm not going to cinch it really tight. And like you can kind of see on my leg, that's fitting in really tight. That's not going to be comfortable for your dog to wear all day. But I'll fit it about right here. And so you can see I can't really move this easily around my leg. I can get 2 fingers under. They're firm 2 fingers. I can't really get 3 under super easily, but I can slide 2 under. That's the right fitness you want it, tightness you want it to be at, and where it can't easily slide around your dog's neck. If it is too loose and it's able to slide around your dog's neck like this, we're not going to maintain good connection with their skin and muscle. But as it does this and as it moves around, those contact points can actually rub into your dog's neck and cause more irritation. So we just want it to fit snug to where it's nice and comfortable for your dog, but where it's not too loose. Another thing you can do to test is see if you can get a finger between the dog's skin and the contact point. And as long as you can't easily slide a finger, you can slide like half a finger, that's okay. But as long as you can't easily fit the whole finger underneath, you'll be set. And once again, for most of you guys' dogs that are coming into training, I will have this fitted to the correct snugness for your dog. And as long as they're not growing puppies that are gonna, double in size in a couple of months, you should be able to keep it around that same tightness. And if you have any questions about how tight it needs to be, or you don't think it's on tight enough or it's too tight, always shoot me a text. You can send a video or a picture of the collar on your dog, and I should be able to help you guys confirm if it's the correct tightness. This way you can make sure you're maintaining a good, steady connection with your dog. Okay, so now that we know how to use the remote and how to make sure the collar is fitted correctly to your dog, I'm going to go over how we're actually going to use the Ecollar in training. I will go over all of this with you guys in person when your dog goes home, but I just want to make sure you guys have a video reference first to be able to know what to do. So as our dogs are in training, we want to make sure the dog has 80% proficiency in any command we give before we go to using the Ecollar. So if they don't have that, we'll take a step back and go back into teaching and use the leash and treats or play, whatever motivates your dog, to teach the commands in that environment. But if the dog's rocking and rolling and we're doing super good and maintaining about 80% proficiency, so 8 out of 10 times I ask the dog to do the command, it will do it without any assistance from me. I'm going to start using the Ecollar as a correction to back up all my commands. So what that will look like is I will ask your dog usually to sit or down. They'll say sit. If they don't sit, I'm going to have this set to their working number. So I want it to be a little uncomfortable for them, not where it's painful, but where enough to where it's like, hey, it gets their attention. And this acts just like a TENS unit. I'll have you guys feel it before I put it on your dog, but it's just going to make the muscles in my hand pulsate. Most people don't feel it until it's above a 20, and most dogs work between a 10 and 15. So it just makes this muscle on your neck pulsate a little, just like a TENS unit does. And it's not painful, it just gets their attention. And so we're going to ask our dog to do a command. If they don't do the command and we know they know the command, we're going to say no, and then we're going to tap the Ecollar. So you can see on that red light, I tapped after I said no. I'm not going to tap and then say no because they don't understand why this tap is happening. I want to make sure to mark it with my negative marker. So no, and then tap the Ecollar. This way they, know the Ecollar correction is coming after that no, so it kind of prepares them to know a correction's coming, but it also makes my no very powerful, so when they don't have the Ecollar on and I say no, they know that it's a correction happening. Now, there are always exceptions to this rule, and it can be kind of dog dependent on how we're going to use this. And that's something I will go over in person, and I'll have in your dog's notes that you'll receive when the dog goes home of, hey, we're going to use the e-collar a little differently. But for the majority of dogs, we're going to ask them to do a command. They don't do the command, or no, tap on the remote, ask them to do the command again. And then if they don't do the command again, we're going to help them out with the leash or with some food or with some pressure, because it shows they don't quite understand why they're getting corrected, and I want to make sure they know why they're getting corrected with the e-collar. And if you have any questions about how we're going to use this e-collar and how we use it in training, feel free to shoot them to me. Ideally, our goal is to end up not needing to use the collar on your dog, but to be able to have it to a backup, so they just listen to the first command every time. And that's really important, is I give them one command and then I'll say no and tap the e-collar. I'm not giving them 2 or 3 commands before I go to use the e-collar. The more consistent we are, the more we build that pattern of behavior, and the dog knows what's coming if it doesn't listen to the command. Means we're going to be able to move off of using the e-collar a lot sooner. If every time I ask the dog to sit and it doesn't sit and I use the e-collar, then they're going to be like, okay, I'm going to sit and I'm going to beat her to that no in the e-collar. I'm always going to give them a fair chance to do it, but I want to make sure I'm ready to back up my command with the e-collar or even with a leash correction, so I make sure they're listening the first time I ask them to do something, not the 5th or 6th time. So now that we know how to use the remote, how to use the collar, how to apply it into training, I'm going to go over some of the extras on the remote. This is just so you know how your remote fully operates, but if you don't want to know any of this information, feel free to just end the video here and you don't have to keep watching. This is just extras for people that want to make sure they know everything about the collar they can. Alright, so on our remote, we will only be using this black S button, but you can see there's a red S button here too. And if you look at the numbers, I'm not sure if you can actually see them, but when I tap them, it bumps my numbers up by 5. And then I let go, and it moves them back down to the original number. So that red S acts like a booster or like an SOS button for a collar, but I want you guys to be fast enough at moving that dial up whatever amount of numbers you think your dog needs, instead of relying on that red S. So the next button I'm going to go over that's here on the remote is this black T. So this black T just makes your collar vibrate. So I'm going to tap it, and you can probably hear the collar vibrating. I don't use that in training. That vibration is actually much stronger than the stim for the majority of dogs we work with. Now, once again, there's always exceptions to the rules, and if I do use the vibrate to work your dog, that's something I'll tell you and we'll go over in person, and I'll show you how and when I want you to use that. But for most dogs that are going home, you'll never use that vibrate and you can just kind of forget about it. All right, so the other thing I wanted to show you is momentary versus continuous. So when you receive the collar and remote, you will receive it in continuous. That's the mode we're going to use for most of our dogs. But it can switch to momentary. So the difference between the two is when it's on continuous, I'm able to hold down this black S button and it will send stim for up to 10 seconds or until my finger comes off. So I'm able to just tap it and it's just going to feel this taps, or I can hold it and it will feel a steady stim until I let go. When it is in momentary, all your dog is going to feel is 1/16 of a second stim. And so I'm going to come in and change it. You can hear it beep as it changes. And so then for the momentary, when I hold it, it's still just going to send that one really brief little thing. So in order to get something longer, right, I have to tap it like that. And that can be a lot as you're trying to think about handling your leash and your dog. So we're going to change it back into that continuous. So the other feature that we have on this remote is that this dial can actually lock. So I can have it set on a number, I can hold down the dial, and the number should blink after about 3 to 5 seconds, and those numbers are locked. So they're they're not going to move when I turn the dial. The thing to be careful about locking our numbers is if I turn my dial up pretty high, and then I go to unlock them, and then I go to turn my dial down, right, those numbers are going to be back up at that high number and they're not going to change. And most of the time I don't lock the dial on any of the dogs because the number we use the e-collar on is going to be different depending on the distraction levels. So if it's empty neighborhood, we might be working on like a 5. If we get out into lows, we could be up to 15 or 20 because the amount of distractions is much higher. So that locking dial, I hardly ever use it, but I just wanted to show you guys that just in case you need to use it. And then the last feature I'll show you guys is the flashlight on the collar. So if you tap this big L on the back, just tap it once and the collar will strobe. Tap it again and it's a solid LED, tap it again and it turns off. That's just really handy if we're going outside with your dogs when it's night or dark and you want your dogs to have that light. And once again, if you have any questions about anything over the remote, the collar, anything in the box, anything about training, always shoot me a text. I'm here to help you guys and want you guys to succeed with using this tool.